Why do we cook? We cook for food, for family, and for friends. We cook to bring people together.
Honey, that looks good. Pardon my fork.
Hello and welcome to Pardon My Fork. This is Andy, and I've got a special guest on the line today. Angela, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Angela Kudlets, she is a food writer, blogger, recipe developer, cookbook author. You're all over the place, Angela.
I am. Yeah, it's been a great ride. It's still a lot of fun and a lot of things to learn still, but I'm having a great time where I am right now.
Well, so let's start at the present. What do you have going on right now?
Right now, I'm knee-deep in preparing for my first competition, actually my first ever competition, other than mail-in recipes and online contests. So I'm preparing for the World Food Championships in Dallas.
Nice. We will see you there.
That's great. Great. Good. Are you competing?
Well, we'll be sous chefing, but then we'll also be doing media for the WFC. It's a great time. We love going out there. I think you're going to have a ton of fun.
Great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I have a great mentor, as it turns out, in Rick Downs. He's really kind of helped prepare me for what to expect and, just kind of a little bit of the ropes and where to find information. And so I've got my Airbnb booked, and my husband's going to be my sous chef. So that should be interesting and comical alone.
I love it, man.
This should be great.
Well, so what brought you to competition? Is it just like one more thing to push yourself, or do you have a particular goal?
Well, I was actually asked last year by Marvin Levy of Gotham Steel brand to go, and I didn't feel like I was really ready last year. I'm not really sure why. I guess I just didn't feel like I was quite at the point where I was worthy of going, and I don't think I really understood the scope of what the WFC was. And so when the opportunity came this year, I had told him if it came up again that I would absolutely be there. So I got the invitation, and so I decided to go. And so I thought, this is something that I have never done, and I definitely feel like I am worthy now. So just in a year, I've gained a lot more knowledge and a lot more product testing and I guess scope of flavors and more flavor profiles and all of those things that are really important to successful cooking. And I've met a great WFC family online just in the last year too. So I think it'll be a really great experience for something, especially for the first time competing. So I'm looking forward to it.
So everybody out there that doesn't know it, you have to get what's called a golden ticket in order to be able to go to the WFC, and you can get it in different ways or different competitions online. So I am curious which competition you did and what your recipe was.
Actually, I received a golden ticket from Gotham Steel. So it was a direct golden ticket, and my entry will be in the dessert category.
Oh, interesting. Dessert. Nice. Okay. Yeah. You're going to be competing against a couple of people we've had on the show here.
I see. Yes, I am aware of that. I'm very nervous, but I figure I'm just going to do what I can. And either way, it's a perfect experience. If I go forward or not, I'll make great friends, learn a lot of new things, and see a new city.
Well, I know you're not flying by the seat of your pants. Do you have any idea what you'll be cooking there?
I do, and I am going to keep that all to myself because I know of your listenership. So I will just say it is in the dessert category, and I'm hoping that it's something that Americans have enjoyed quite a bit, considering it's not quite American.
Well, I'm sorry, listeners. I was trying. No leg up today. Angela's keeping it to herself.
It's been tough. I've really wanted to say, but I can't.
The nice thing about the WFC, though, is that as long as you're making something that is delicious, visually appealing, something that it doesn't have to be stunning in a complex way, but it has to just look delicious, right? And as long as it looks delicious and it tastes delicious, and obviously you get it turned in on time, you have a really good chance of winning. And so it's just one of those things where I don't know, you do have more of a chance than you realize, even though you're cooking against all of these top people. I mean, sometimes it's just about that little extra something,
Right. And as I understand, a lot of home cooks have taken home the win in past competitions. So I don't really feel like I'm not able to compete at the same level. I just hope that what I'm going to bring will be enough.
Oh, yeah.
So I just do the best that I can do. And I really would love to taste some of my competitors' food. Perhaps I can try to figure that out somehow, but I'm sure they're pretty keeping tight-lipped too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You'll be able to taste it all at the event, but before then, probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
It's funny what you said, though. You're right. I mean, there are home chefs that have taken home the win. I'm looking at Kim Bannock, for example. She won first place in seafood here a couple of years ago, and she's not a classically trained chef. She's just a home cook,
Right. I think a lot of home cooks don't really receive a lot of credit. Sometimes I lost a friend last year. I don't know what the circumstances were, but it was someone I met on Facebook in a chef's group. And I was really upset because I thought we had a great relationship. We'd met a few times and I really learned a lot from her. And so I thought it was really unfortunate, but I kind of felt like sometimes I didn't feel like I blended in with that particular group because I was just looked at as a home cook. But those home cooks, if you look at a lot of celebrities that have shows on Food Network and other cooking channels, they're also just home cooks that have never been classically trained. And people do call me chef. I was really uncomfortable with that title for many years, but basically I felt like, oh, I must not be a real chef if I've never gone to school or if I can't break down an animal or, but then I got over it and I said, if somebody feels comfortable with that, that's fine. So I can't just say I'm a home cook because I'm a little bit more elevated. So for a lot of years, I just used that terminology. But if other people want to call me that, that's fine at this point.
Sure. Well, so it begs the question. I mean, we're talking all this stuff about home cook. What do you or how did you kind of get your background in cooking, I guess?
That's an interesting story, actually. My husband, we put our home on the market because he got a job almost immediately. We lived in Florida, where I was born, and he got a job in Knoxville. And so we put the house on the market, and he went ahead and left to Tennessee. And so I stayed for the next year because I just knew every week our house was going to have an offer. Of course, it was at the worst time possible when the home market crisis happened. So basically there I was working, got home from work. I had already stopped at Publix or Walmart on the way home and said, okay, good. Well, I'm just going to watch some TV and I'll eat ramen noodles or something. So I became addicted to cooking TV. So at the time I was watching Good Deal with Dave Lieberman. That was a really great show. And I felt really inspired by him. And there were two other shows. There was Get Fresh with Sarah Snow, which was more organic. And I knew nothing about that back then. And of course, Paula's Home Cooking. Of course, there's not much else I could say about that. Everybody knows who that is. So I basically just would record hours and hours of that while I was at work. So when I got home, I would binge for probably 4 or 5 hours. Then I started going to the store to shop for what I was going to make that night. And I basically just taught myself how to cook from watching those 3 shows and using a lot of butter, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So I kind of just did it that way. And of course, I didn't really have anybody to test my food because my husband wasn't there. So I basically just took it from there. And then when I got here to Tennessee with him the next year, I just started just dabbling in different things. And finally, it just took off. And I wasn't always great, but everything was always edible. And then I just began to learn flavor profiles and what went together and what didn't. And so then it just started blooming into recipe development. And the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah. It's one of those weird things where you just kind of catch a bug, right? And you just ride that wave.
You do. And it was something completely odd because I probably would burn boiled water. I still can't boil an egg because I don't eat eggs. And it's the funniest thing ever. But, I just can't do it. It's one of those things.
So you don't eat eggs because of an allergy or?
Okay. So my mom, when I was a kid, told me that the little chickie, the egg could have been a little chickie. And so that turn my life around. So it's really my mother's fault.
I got it. I got you. I'm with you. Do you still?
Now I can eat it in cake batter, brownies. I have no problem with that.
But you won't do a fried egg or scrambled or anything?
No, hard boiled, scrambled, fried. No, nothing.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So, a deviled egg dessert is not on the table for you. We've started narrowing it down,
Right. I do make it, but it's a struggle. I might get 2 or 3 out of maybe 30. So pretty much my mom boils the egg, I make the rest of it.
That's sometimes you have that one thing that's hard to overcome, that one thing, I talk a lot to chefs. As a matter of fact, here a couple of weeks ago, I had a chef who told me it was bold of me to cook an egg for another chef buddy of mine that had come over in the morning. All I was doing was cooking him some breakfast, and I'm not like a super good cook or anything, but the chef that I was interviewing was just like, whoa, that's bold, cooking an egg for another chef, because that's kind of a litmus test. But, for me, it was just breakfast.
Right.
Not that I'm able to cook anything else with any competency. It's just, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, sometimes it is. And from what I understand, Gordon Ramsay, his test for a new chef, I think, is to be able to make the perfect egg. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but that's what I've heard a lot of times. So
he does talk a lot about his perfect egg, doesn't he? I've seen him make it on, I don't even know how many shows.
Yeah, pretty much on it seems like every show I've seen, he goes over it and he talks about, how just fluffy it is. And it always looks undercooked to me, but what do I know? Because I don't even eat them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if there's not a pile of liquid on the plate, I mean, maybe it's okay. I don't know. Maybe that's why he puts the crusty bread underneath of it.
That could be.
So you kind of just started watching Food Network and got hooked, huh?
I did. It was really an interesting time because I really had nothing else to do. I just had to keep the house clean for, showings, and I had a really good realtor who was always there. And I don't know really what about each of the shows that really just captured my interest out of those 3, because they're all 3 so different. You have Jewish cooking to organic to country home bad cooking. And I think it was probably Paula's home cooking that I seem to gear myself toward more. And it's probably because more people probably ate that food in my mind at the time than having those, expensive organic ingredients way back in the early 2000s. But I found a lot of interesting things about it. And so I thought, well, gee, anybody can make macaroni and cheese. So, you just go and you open the box and craft is like easy macaroni and cheese. Well, then you try it on your own and you realize, wow, there's a little bit something more to that. And then you realize you can make it really fancy and use different cheeses. And so I really did learn a lot from that time.
Isn't that so interesting how that happens? It's like this awakening to a whole new world. It's like when I introduce my friends to barbecue, right? And when I have them do the barbecuing, even though it's like on my grill, it's like you're opening their mind to how this stuff is made, and it gets those cogs turning.
Right. Oh my gosh, you mentioned barbecue. I recently tried some brisket, actually for the first time ever, at an event that I was at, and I was asking the owners if I could speak to them about, possibly doing a review on their food at some point. And I asked them where they were from, and they said Philadelphia. And I was like, wow. And I was like, well, what's the name of your business? Because, of course, it was a private event, so they didn't really advertise. And they said Smoke and F Barbecue. And I was like, well, that's kind of an interesting name, but it's kind of cool, too. And so at the end of this meal, I was like, gosh, I really want to go to Philadelphia. And they're like, well, it's not that far away. And I was like, well, I guess not. Well, I found out later they were talking about Tennessee. I was like, oh. And so now I'm totally hooked on their brisket. And I love ribs. I like chicken, anything on the barbecue pretty much. But brisket's kind of my thing that I'm really addicted to anymore. So I'm thinking maybe I'll get a smoker in the future and dabble in that a little bit. But I'm not quite ready to do that yet.
Well, I am just going to throw this out there. the Ugly Drum smokers are a great place to start. I'm just throwing it out there for you, and I'm throwing it out there for some of our listeners. Anytime anybody is like, yeah, I want to get a smoker, but I don't really know where to start. I mean, yes, you can get a smoker from Home Depot or, online or Walmart or whatever. But if you're wanting to do some seriously tasty food and kind of do it the right way, I mean, people are using Ugly Drum smokers on competition circuits and winning, but yet you can get one and or make one for like $150. So just throwing that out there for you.
Yeah, that might be something I want to test in the future, because I'll tell you, there's nothing better than really good barbecue. And it's really, for me, and where even though I'm in Tennessee, it seems like it's really hard to find. In Knoxville, we had 2 barbecue restaurants, like big name. One of them burned and closed and never reopened. And the other one I just think is a joke, and I won't say who they are, but it's just like, it's not real barbecue. The Smoke and F and all the little small mom and pop places that might pop up on the side of the road, to me, is like amazing. And they're like your small businesses, the kinds you want to support, because they're not, to me, everything is so standardized. It's a restaurant. You're supposed to have the certain quality, and sometimes it just doesn't, and then it just is kind of a letdown.
Right. Well, that's another benefit of having a rotating menu, though. If you keep it fresh all the time, even every week, people don't get accustomed to that one specific flavor that you're known for. So if it's a little bit off, it's not necessarily that it's off. You haven't made that recipe in 3 or 4 weeks because you're on a rotating menu. So I do think that one of the pitfalls for places like that is just sticking with exactly the same thing all of the time. There's definitely a market for that. There's definitely people that want to eat that way. But, I don't know. If you can kind of break it out and have a little bit of rotation in there, it will allow you as a cook, as a pit master, the flexibility to kind of change what you're doing and let it evolve over time, right?
People love variety sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Speaking of variety, Angela, I'm going to run this one past you. I recently started grilling my cabbage, but not grilling like until it's cooked, but like super hot, searing it over coals or over wood, right? Just until it starts to sweat. And then I take it inside and I throw it in the freezer to cool it down. And then I make coleslaw out of that.
Wow. That sounds really, really amazing.
Oh, it's been my new thing. And let me tell you guys at home, it is incredible. I am so addicted to it.
Wow. That sounds really good, though. And I mean, who doesn't like coleslaw?
Exactly, right?
So the grilled romaine lettuce I thought was such a great idea. So I put a head of lettuce on there and grilled it. And it was really good. When it was done, I just put a little bit of dressing and some blue cheese crumbles and some bacon. And it was really, really delicious. So I thought it was either going to be the greatest thing or the stupidest thing I ever did. But it turned out good.
Nice. Yeah. So it ended up kind of like I don't know what you'd call it, a grilled wedge salad kind of.
Yeah, exactly. It was really delicious, though. And I've made it a few times, but I'm the only one in my family right now that'll try it because everybody else thinks it's just too weird.
Oh, man, weird. Come on. They got to push that limit, right?
Right.
That's what it's all about. Whether you're a chef or a home cook, I think pushing that boundary and pushing either your customers or your clients and your family to think outside of the box, it's not only going to improve them as customers and clients, it's going to improve you as the cook, right?
Exactly. Right. I agree.
It's one of those weird fine balances that you have to kind of find when you're cooking for other people.
Yeah. I know a lot of people, my husband used to be extremely picky. And as I experimented more and more, I mean, I felt like a mother sometimes. I'm like, here, just take a bite. If you like it, then, I mean, I'm just like, really, come on. I'm your wife. Just take a bite. Don't make me beg you to try it. Now it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, I'll try it. I don't even have to ask. And he may not like it, but at least he tried it. But he's come a long way in the last 18 years, just learning to trust my cooking and experimentation. Used to feel more like a science project, but now it's not quite so much.
I wish my parents were more like that. I'll try to feed them something out of the box, and they're just like, nope, not even going to taste it.
Oh.
So you started out, I mean, literally just watching the Food Network, fell in love with it, started cooking often and doing your own experimentation, stuff like that. And what's that been, 10 years ago now?
It's about 12 years.
Yeah, 12 years. It's so
Yeah.
funny to me how that works. Were you one of those people that would like take notes while you were watching, or were you just kind of going off the cuff?
I was really just going off the cuff. There was just so much that I didn't know. I was just astonished at, I mean, just the simplest things like a citrus press. What the heck is that? It's like a juicer for your hand. I mean, just get the thing that you plug in and it does it for you. Well, you don't really get the same result from that. And you don't get the same enjoyment of knowing that it's fresh squeezed. You did it yourself and not some machine you plug in.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you need something right now, like this very second, and you've got one of those machines and you got to set it up before you can use it, it's a little different.
Yeah, and who wants to clean it up? I mean, this is something you can just, throw right in the sink and wash out and rinse and dry, and it's ready to go again.
I'll tell you, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I've actually had a few moments where I needed some lemon juice ASAP because something had to go on the stove like right now. And I stuck a lemon wedge into the handle of a pair of tongs and then grabbed the tongs from the other end and used that to squeeze the juice out. You do what you have to in the pinch, right?
You improvise in a kitchen like nothing else.
That's right. You're like Bear Grylls up in here. Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Exactly. That's a good one, though. I'll have to remember that.
Well, hey, we're throwing out some food for thought and knowledge for life here. You know what I mean? Are there any food shows that you still watch, or are you kind of beyond that now?
The very funny thing is that I live in the country, so there's really just satellite. And I feel like and our internet is very spotty. I have to actually use a Verizon Wi-Fi or MiFi, whatever they call it, just to be able to do anything. So I am extremely limited. So sometimes I feel like my website and my blog suffer a little bit just because I have very limited access. But we subscribe to Netflix because that's ironically the only thing that seems to work. But I refuse to pay $150 a month for satellite. Mm-hmm. So we have TV solely just for Netflix. And unfortunately, there's not very many cooking shows that are on there. So I really miss my cooking shows. I feel like you lose some connection that way. But I don't watch anything any longer. And it's kind of sad, really. But it has afforded me the time to work on my business and focus on the things that are important for this year for, the competition and build more of a client base and such. But I really do miss the Food Network a lot and the cooking channel.
Well, I'm about to ruin your business life now that you've said that, because I have some favorites on Netflix that I'm going to share, not just with you, Angela, but with everybody else listening. The Wild Chef, featuring Martin Picard from the French region of Canada, wherever that is. I think he's from Quebec. I have been loving that show. It's so much fun to watch, and he's an incredible chef. So it's called The Wild Chef. I highly recommend that. It's on Netflix. Lords and Ladles. It is this Irish show with these different Irish chefs, and they're cooking these centuries-old recipes in centuries-old castles. It's super fun. I love watching it. And then, of course, the first season or two of Chef's Table, I'm a big fan of that. It's gotten a little, I don't know, outside of the box for me here in the last couple of seasons. I haven't enjoyed it quite as much, but those first couple of seasons, oh yeah, 100% love it. Anyways, that's just a couple that you can watch. It's not going to ruin your business, but it'll give you something to binge on at night, Well, we are right up against the break, Angela. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about how you got your sponsorships, what is going on from here, and you're going to tell us all about your next great dish, okay?
Okay, sounds great.
Awesome. And you guys stay tuned. After these messages, we will be right back. Hey folks, odds are if you love this show, and I know you do, then you are a foodie and a food sport enthusiast. That's why I'm encouraging you to go and check out the Spoonie radio network on iHeartMedia. They've got a ton of great hosts over there, including Patrick Mosier, Mark Conway, Trey Chapman, Randy White, and so many more. So make sure to head over there and get your foodie fix on the Spoonie Radio Network. And we are back with Angela Kudlets. So, we were just talking about Netflix cooking shows. I was just dropping a little bit on you there. Hopefully, when you go back and listen to this, you can maybe check out some of those shows. I think you're really going to enjoy them.
Yeah, you did mention one show that I did watch from the beginning and have pretty much almost caught up, which was Chef's Table. And I kind of just binged on that in the beginning when we first got Netflix. But I do remember there was some guy, some chef, and I don't remember his name. And I thought it was super extreme cooking, kind of like, are you crazy? But it was like amazing too. And he was cooking, I think, in Patagonia, and he would put food directly on like stone and fire, and I thought he was crazy and brilliant all at the same time. So I'll have to go back and check out more Chef's Table and make sure that I have caught up on that.
Yeah, gosh, what is that chef's name? He cooks in the Argentinian style where it's directly over fire.
Yes, he's amazing. I'll have to go back and look and see who he is.
Yeah, he's got this rig set up where he'll put coals on a tray. It's like a three-tier thing, and he puts coals on the first tier and the third tier, and then the meat goes on the middle tier, and it sears it from both sides. It's really cool.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome.
Well, eventually you're going to have your own cooking TV show, it sounds like. You've already got a cookbook out, right? I do. It debuted in August of 2018, and I've had some really good success with it. And it's the Everyday Cook's Cookbook. So it's really geared toward the everyday home cook or someone who really is just starting out and doesn't really have a lot of experience. And it's really been a good thing for me. It took about 4 years to finally put it in paper and actually printed and copied and distributed. So it's been fun. Was the 4 years just developing the recipes, or was that actual time trying to get the book published? Well, at first I thought, of course, I'm so brilliant. I'm this home cook that taught myself how to cook, who has this amazing story of, how I grew up with not a lot of, really interesting culture as far as food goes. And I'm sure I can just submit it to somebody in, Random House or whoever publishes these big cookbooks. And I'm sure they'll just take it. I mean, why wouldn't they? Well, right. So here I am self-publishing through Steuben Press, and they were really good to work with. And the reason it took 4 years is because I didn't know how to bake, which is ironic because if you heard me in the first part of the show, I'm competing in the dessert category in the World Food Championships, which from what I understand, since I'm a first-time competitor, is the largest food sport that there is competition. But I really didn't want to do a baking section because I didn't know how to bake. So I basically wasted the whole last year just on baking. And then it turns out to be my thing. So it's kind of ironic, really. So I didn't know about how to format it. And I had all these grandiose ideas of every recipe has to have a picture and how it was going to look. But I never thought about if I'm doing it myself, who's going to make it look like that. So it is a good cookbook. It's definitely my first one. So hopefully my next one will be a lot more of what I envisioned it to be. Mm-hmm. And hopefully not take 4 years to develop, right? No, I'm shooting for 2. I'm hoping to knock it down in half at least, because I really want to reach out to my followers and find out, what kinds of things would you like to make at home that you either don't know how to make or you're tired of your version and maybe a better version of it. That is one of the weird things about social media. We've got, so much stuff out there. It's almost like, why even buy a cookbook anymore, except that people do, and except that I still use them, right? It's one of those weird things where you're just kind of sitting there going, well, it's 2019. We can Google search anything. I can get 8 different recipes for duck right now. Just type it in, and it'll take me longer to type it in than it will for the internet to go out and go and find me the recipes, right? And so there is this thing where it's like, why even get a cookbook? But then if you have a cookbook, you find yourself going back and using it so often, and it's just I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around, but you found yours to be very well accepted, huh?
I did. It was kind of a slow start, really, because I had a really good friend, Michael Arpino. He works for Williams Sonoma, among other things. But he really got me going with my first appearance, which was at Williams Sonoma. And so he was nice enough to set up a cookbook signing with the manager and corporate's approval. And then I came back the following 2 weeks after that and did a cooking demo. So that got me a lot of exposure because, of course, this was in the mall in Knoxville. And I thought it was really a good experience because I really wasn't sure how to handle people. I didn't really know if I was well-spoken enough to talk to people or to try to promote myself. I mean, I've never really been a salesperson, and I definitely would never sell something I wouldn't buy myself. So I knew I felt really confident in my cookbook, and I think that's what made it easier for me.
Well, there is that aspect, right? You're going into an area and doing a demo, but if you have something to sell, you kind of have to talk it up, right? And so there's a sales aspect about it. I know a lot of the top competitors at the WFC have moved on into like doing demos at different Walmarts and stuff like that. And there's a sales component there. You got to kind of work the crowd, and you got to be a little bit fun and a little bit fruity and a little bit this and that. There's this extra little something that you have to throw into it. You can't just sit up there and be completely quiet and just talk or excuse me, just cook and don't say anything, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're only as good as the item that you make and the dish you make. And you did bring up Walmart and demos, and that's something that I believe, from what I understand, I have the potential to start doing after I compete, I guess. I still need to learn about that, but I really am interested in that because I live in Athens, Tennessee, which is not a very big place, and our Walmart is about 7 miles from us. And I started this Facebook group called Debt Snowball Budget Meals, which is partly based on Dave Ramsey's principles of being having financial peace, but also Walmart. And I know this is going to sound really snobbish, but I had no idea that some of their brands were just as good as some of the name brands until I started Dave Ramsey's plan, and I'm on my budget. And I'm like, my gosh, why am I spending $3 for, product X when it's $2 for their brand and it was just as good? Mm-hmm. So I've been noticing a lot that with the demos, of course, they're using the Walmart brands and other items, but I really enjoy doing cooking demos. And I thought that was something that I really could bring to my local community, because in certain communities, there's a limit on income. And I think that in a lot of communities, people think that they can't eat food that tastes good because it's just a lower budget kind of thing. But really, if you just mix the best things together, even if they are budget or they're generic, you can really make a great meal out of it and surprise yourself and your family, especially if you have kids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know my wife has been wanting to do something like a food bank fabulous kind of a show where she can just take, stuff that, quite frankly, you get, like I said, at the food bank. That's something that people normally just donate. And I don't know, it's not bad food. But it's just things that people don't really know how to cook with. And there's definitely a mentality there, right? Like I don't want to use class type of terms, but people who are in a lower economic status and they're trying to buy as much as they can on a very tight budget, there is that expectation there that the food is not going to taste very good, but that's 100% not the case. And so if someone was able to get the word out and start showing, hey, you can cook good food on this stuff. I mean, look at just 50 years ago. Look at our mothers and our grandmothers, what they were cooking with. My grandmother and my grandfather, on my mom's side, they moved here in poverty. they didn't have anything. Like, they just were scrapping and scrimping and saving. They moved wherever the farm work was because that's what my grandfather did. He was just kind of an extra set of hands, right? And up until the day my grandmother died, she had a massive garden that she'd grow every year. She would can, and she would cook, and she would boil, and she would freeze, and she was able to make some of the most delicious food. And, granted, some of that is coming from a place of, I was a child when I was eating it, and there was a lot of love in the home and all that. But, we were able to cook on that budget in the past, and somehow we've lost that in the last 30, 40 years.
Right. I agree. I think we've lost a lot from what our grandparents did or what our mothers did. And I think the worst thing that anyone can do is to have lost all of those favorite recipes or tips on how to be more budget friendly from their grandparents, because a lot of people don't sit in the kitchen at the table anymore and help their grandmothers with dinner or their grandfathers. And they don't really understand all of those great things that are lost in the future and what hard work went into learning and coming up with some of those great family things.
Yeah. The work that went into it. That's a really good way of putting it. The experience, the knowledge, just simply through doing.
I know one of the things too, you mentioned about class and not wanting to put it into a class. And there's one, you hit the nail on the head with that, but there's one thing that I inspire to do, two things actually, but one of them is I had the bright idea of, I think I want to do a food truck. And then I realized the investment in it. And I said, well, obviously I can't do that. So let me just try other angles. But I would say that if I could do two things ever and money wasn't an option, one would be to do a food truck for the homeless, because I feel like a lot of people are missed out. And sometimes people miss meals because they can't get to shelters. And especially in small towns, even like the one I live in, there's not really a lot of opportunity for a mass area for shelter and food and housing and things like that. But on the flip side, that same food truck, which also is a business, which is helping afford you to pay for the homeless food, is to go to schools and provide meals to the kids to take home after school. Because as you mentioned, a lot of families don't have the high budgets, and I feel like there's just a big need right there. And that's a good way to give back to the community. So you can also teach children a way to give back. You see these stories all the time about kids bringing extra sandwiches to school for their coworkers and their team members and their students and just cafeteria workers, everybody just lending a hand out to help.
I kind of like the idea of doing a food truck that had a big bay window in the front and maybe some speakers on the outside, so you could do some not just cooking demos but lessons as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a really good idea. Something I actually want to do at home with a certified outdoor kitchen, but I'm not at that point yet. But yeah, that concept is great because it's kind of mobile.
We really should not have dropped home ec from school. That's a big issue. I mean, even when I was in high school, I graduated in 2001, but I went to a smaller school. It was probably, honestly, one of the last schools to even have home ec for every single student. And so even I took home ec. I mean, I learned a little bit of sewing. I learned a little bit of cooking. Just little stuff like that, little life stuff that I do honestly think gave me a leg up on some of my friends that went to larger schools and larger towns that were 60 miles away. Cause when I was going to high school, I was way out in the boonies. I was like you. I mean, it was tiny. My graduating class was 26 people, I think. And so, it was a very small school, but all my friends that were going to the bigger high schools, they didn't have any of that stuff. There were a few of them that got lucky and had automotive courses the last couple of years of high school, and they were able to kind of break out and go on and do other things. But man, there's really a component missing there in school now where it's not just working with your hands. Everybody keeps saying, oh, you got to work with your hands, with the music program and stuff like that, which I don't disagree with. But at the same time, home ec or cooking or something like that, there are real world applications that if you're not getting it at home, and trust me, I would rather people get it at home than at school. But if they're not getting it at home and you're not getting it at school, well, you've got these folks that are graduating that are hardly even adults.
Right. I totally agree. I didn't even have home ec when I was in school. Wasn't even offered. So, yeah, I really think that's kind of a mistake. I really do.
Yeah, if we could find a way of getting it back into the schools, that would be kind of a passion project for me. Kind of like your food truck. I would like to get a little more, I don't know, fine dining, I guess you might say, back into the schools. You know, last week we talked to Chef Carol Cody, and she's the culinary director for a senior living center. And one of the things that I loved about her philosophy was these people are going to be eating 3 meals a day for the rest of their lives at the same restaurant. And in
Right.
good conscience, you can't just keep the menu the same all the time. And
Right.
I think that you and I are kind of in agreement with that. We're kind of along the same vein there. Food can bring people a lot closer together and can teach them a lot more than they're being taught right now.
Right. I totally agree. I think sometimes it's just more about convenience than actual experience. And that's a shame.
Mm-hmm. What's the story with that outdoor kitchen? You thinking about building one off your house?
Yeah, I actually, I'm going to call it sort of my she shed, but I want to have a custom kitchen built because I have cats. So I can't prepare, of course, certain foods because of the cottage law in my home. So I really wanted to do that and have a stainless steel sort of small end commercial kitchen with storage. So I basically could prepare my food there. I could store it there, like my dry pantry, and also offer baking lessons. And I took that up from a friend of mine, Angela Marie Perkins. She was a competitor on MasterChef. And what she did was she would offer just free classes to junior kids, to just little kids. And it was free. And all they had to do when they showed up at her bed and breakfast was bring a dozen eggs and a pound of butter. And I thought, wow, that is like such an awesome thing. And so I thought, well, I think I could do that. So that's another way to give back. But I'm not at that point yet, maybe next year, because I'm trying to do it with cash. So I thought that would be a good opportunity, but I'll have to resource it and see. But in the meantime, I can use it to help build my business and then hopefully get the word out on other options.
Man, I love that idea. I'm dying to build an outdoor kitchen off of my house. As a matter of fact, I have a stainless steel wash sink with the knee pads, right? Restaurant grade, blah, blah, blah. I bought it thinking, okay, here's the first component of my outdoor kitchen. And then, other projects around the house came up and I haven't been able to do it quite yet, but it's still something that I want to do. I think anybody that's a real foodie about cooking, I mean, a foodie can be a person that goes out to eat a lot, but a foodie can also be someone that just loves to cook at home. And
Right.
I'm a major foodie as far as home cooking, and yeah, I'm dying to have that outdoor cooking space. So I'm very jealous. When you get that thing all put together, you're gonna have to send us some videos. I want to share that out.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. I'll tell you, I was really inspired by one of the really, really beautiful kitchens that I saw recently on one of my TV appearances, WATE in Knoxville. Has a really beautiful new kitchen set it's a white kitchen and beautiful stainless steel. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is the kind of kitchen I want in there. So hopefully I'll be able to kind of build it based on that. But it's really beautiful.
I had forgotten that you do some TV spots. What's the story with that? How'd you get started in that?
Well, actually, two friends of mine, Roger and Gwen Predesy, they're food and travel writers from Predesy Living. They messaged me and basically said that they were, I believe it was Gwen, who was offered a TV demo spot, and she wasn't able to do it because at the time they were in Atlanta, and they've since moved to Florida. And of course, she wasn't going to drive here to Atlanta. She had another appointment. And so she thought maybe I would be interested. So her husband kind of set it up, and RMD Advertising, who I guess she worked with, basically reached out to me and asked me if that would be something I would be interested in. And I took it. And so I've been doing local TV in the Chattanooga and Knoxville market since, and it's really been great. I really have liked it a lot.
Oh man, that's super fun. Are you just kind of showing up and doing segments like cooking whatever you want, or do they have specific things they want you to do?
They provide whatever the sponsor product is and the recipe. So basically, I just go and I demo it, and I have a display already ready, and I talk about the product. And there's been a lot of products that I've used. Keystone Meats is one of them, and it's actually sold at Walmart. And it's been a really good, high quality product that I've liked to do and to use. So I've done a lot of those.
That's fascinating. So that's where a lot of that recipe development stuff comes from, is you get these products and you're going to have to do a TV segment on them. So you have to come up with what the recipe is going to be, what you're doing with them, how they cook. I mean, the whole 9 yards, huh?
Right. And you have to make it easy for them to follow. And it is a lot of fun. There's one thing that I've been really trying to hope that some station would just let me come in and do my own thing. I don't know if you've tried this product, but Naturific, they have like gourmet salts, and I'm sure your kitchen probably looks like what mine used to, but I probably had over 150 spices. And I was at the point where I had to add on, at the time, at the house we had here before we moved to the country, I had to add on in my kitchen, and it was a new house. And I had to have this whole other section for storage and pantry and spices because I had so many. Well, now I use like 5 or 6 main seasonings all the time. It seems like, you think you have to have the A to Z of all the spices, and then you realize that you really only need a few, aside from the barbecue kind of thing. But I tend to really just use Naturific now. So I've really been hoping to do some kind of segment on TV about that. But so far, of course, it's all been product promotion from the certain companies.
It's kind of funny you say that, because I recently bought a barbecue rub just to try it and see what I thought about it. And I liked it. And so I saved a little bit out and I tried to back engineer the flavors that I was tasting.
It's hard.
It is. Well, it is hard. Let me tell you, my wife has got such an incredible palate. I'm so lucky because she'll be able to kind of taste back and forth and go, it needs a pinch of this and a dash of that. And so we can kind of tease it out, and see what all those flavors are. I got very fortunate in that way. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I have a ton of spices, although I do feel like I use quite a few of them, but we don't limit ourselves in any way when we're cooking. I mean, I've done Mediterranean style ribs. I've done barbecue sushi rolls. I mean, we're kind of all over the board, and so I tend to use up those spices a little bit more than I think some of my friends would. I remember a bottle of Vindaloo that was starting to get cakey. It had been on my shelf for a long time. And my wife and I were both like, well, we don't want this stuff to go to waste, because, I mean, it was expensive. It was like $12 for this little bottle. And I said, well, what's a good recipe to use Vindaloo with? I don't even really know. And so I think we made a curried fried rice with smoked ham slices on top or something like that. You know what I mean? But that's what it is for me. I think what expands my cooking more than anything else is that I'm so cheap and I don't want anything to go to waste. I have to find ways to use it.
Right. I'm the same way. I try to find new products to test all the time, too, for my website at Your Next Great Dish, because a lot of people want all of these different components sometimes, and they're tired of eating the same thing. And I think I would use a lot more spices if my husband wasn't so picky. But he still has certain things he just completely refuses to eat. And I try to sneak it in. But he can't have spicy foods. So I really love spicy. I shouldn't eat it, but I do. So I'm really limited sometimes as to what kind of spices, because you face it, we don't have time to make 2 full separate meals all the time. So I think I would explore spices a lot more if I had the opportunity to.
Sure. You mentioned your website, by the way, Your Next Great Dish. What is that, and what do you have going on over there?
Well, I have a great person that actually puts it together and runs it for me, Chris. He's really good at capturing what exactly I wanted with it, because I was trying to do it on my own. And basically, I have my blog. I have a product testing page, which I have received a lot of products lately to test. So I'm going to be catching up on that really soon. Recipes, you can order my cookbook there. I have restaurant reviews, so I actually do a lot of restaurant reviews as well. So I'll go and I do a very expansive restaurant review, though. It's not just, one of those, I don't really care for some of those restaurant review kind of things, but I do write and review for TripAdvisor too. And I have a lot of readership there. So I think you should just let people know what's available. Sometimes people think recipes are just way too complex. So I like to have a variety of recipes there, and just a lot of information, tips and tricks. Sometimes people don't realize the simple things, or if there's a product out there that's not expensive, that could make their job a lot easier in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed you really don't stick to any one genre. I mean, you've got things that are, fudgy cookies, and then you've also got keto, gluten-free recipes. Like you cook it all.
I'm all across the board. And basically that's kind of like, hey, that sounds good. Let me try that. Or I wonder how this would be. Or somebody will say, hey, do you make this? And I say, well, no, but I'll try. And so then a recipe is developed and I end up making it. And it turns out to be something people really like a lot. So I really don't. Sometimes people ask me, well, what's your signature dish? And I really had to think about it. And if anybody did ask me as far as the signature dish, I'd have to say it's my unfried chicken, which is a really simple meal to make. And you just take chicken breast, you pat it dry, roll it in mayonnaise, or put it in a Ziploc with mayonnaise, use Italian style breadcrumbs, and you put it on the refrigerator for 30 minutes, and you put it on a baking sheet and bake it, and it comes out super crisp. And to me, that was like a healthier version of fried chicken, even though it had mayonnaise, and it came out really delicious. So that would be like my signature dish. So people ask about that a lot.
That's fascinating. And what you said about mayonnaise, like I understand people hear mayonnaise and they go, oh, that's whatever. But what is it really? It's eggs, oil, salt, little vinegar, a few other spices. Like it's really not that much. It's the base of every good sauce that everybody likes.
Right. And you mentioned coleslaw. I mean, how would you make coleslaw if you didn't have mayonnaise besides just vinegar based?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know what? We need to start just calling it aioli. That's what people do anyway.
Mayoli. Yeah.
Mayoli.
That's a good one.
There you go. That's awesome, man. Well, I highly encourage people to go and check out your website. You've got so much cool stuff going on over there. It is very impressive. And, yeah, it's a ton of fun to go through. Remind everybody one more time where they can find you and what you have going on. Your website, of course, is www.yournextgreatdish.com, right?
Yes, it is. I'm also on Facebook under Angela D. Kudlets. I do invite people to my personal page, and I have Your Next Great Dish as my business group page. And I've just recently started the Debt Snowball Budget Meals group for anyone. It is open for anyone. It's not a closed group to find recipes that are on a budget. And sometimes I try to give the price breakdown if I can on that.
I love it. That's so awesome. And you guys, we will have all of this linked underneath this episode on pardonmyfork.com, which, yes, I did finally get up and running. So go and check that out. We're going to keep populating it. We're going to be putting a lot of fun stuff up over there. Angela, thank you so much for talking to us. And I really look forward to seeing you in Dallas.
Sounds great. I look forward to it. And thank you so much, Andy. And if you will, just pardon my fork as well.
You got it. I want to thank Angela one more time for coming on. What a great conversation. Great person. Make sure you go and check her out, her website, her Facebook, everything that she's got going on. It's a ton of fun and very impressive stuff. So make sure you're checking that out. Also, make sure that you're coming by and checking out pardonmyfork.com. We just got it up and running. Make sure that you are liking and subscribing on the Facebook, to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is you listen. And we sure appreciate that about you guys. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for telling a friend. For Angela, this is Andy, and we will see you next time.